When drivers begin apologising on live TV, you know something's gone terribly wrong. And that's exactly what happened at the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix in what was supposed to be one of the most glamorous and prestigious races on the calendar. The world watched in disbelief as Formula One's finest became embroiled in a slow-motion farce. The result? A race so manipulated, so predictable, that it left even the most passionate fans cringing. What unfolded on the narrow streets of Monte Carlo wasn't a high-octane battle between the world's best. It was a strategic standoff that looked more like Mario Kart than motorsport. With drivers deliberately crawling to manufacture pit windows and overtakes nearly impossible, many are now asking, has Formula One's most iconic race become its biggest problem? This video breaks down exactly what happened, why Monaco became a parody of itself, and what it means for the future of F1. If you care about the integrity of this sport, hit subscribe, because what we're about to explore matters. The 2025 Monaco Grand Prix was meant to be a spectacle, a celebration of Formula One's enduring glamour and technical excellence. Instead, it became a cautionary tale, exposing the widening gap between tradition and modern racing reality. For decades, Monaco has stood as the sport's most iconic event, a throwback to a golden era of racing. But after this year's edition, many are wondering if it has simply become a beautiful illusion, an untouchable relic no longer fit for purpose. The intention was noble. F1 officials, under pressure from fans and media to improve the quality of racing at Monaco, introduced a mandatory two-stop rule for this year's event. On paper, it seemed like a clever way to shake things up. More strategy, more opportunities for surprise, more chances for the grid to reshuffle. But instead of unlocking dynamic racecraft, it opened Pandora's box. What we got wasn't a race. It was a slow-motion farce that unfolded in full view of millions. Take a closer look and you'll see the warning signs were there from the start. The very nature of the Monaco circuit, with its impossibly tight corners, zero runoff areas, and narrow straights, makes overtaking virtually impossible. And in an era where modern F1 cars are wide, long, and aerodynamically sensitive, that difficulty only multiplies. Drivers and teams know this, which is why qualifying has always been king here. But this year, with the added layer of a second compulsory pit stop, the race devolved into something else entirely, a high-stakes game of traffic management. Teams quickly realised that the fastest way to gain advantage wasn't through aggressive overtakes or daring tyre strategies. It was through obstruction. Several squads instructed one of their drivers to deliberately slow down, backing up the field to create a pit stop window for their teammate. Williams did it with Sainz and Albon. RB did it with Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson. The tactic was obvious, cynical, and completely legal under current rules. But it made a mockery of the racing. This wasn't clever strategy. It was blatant manipulation of race flow, and it led to farcical scenes. George Russell, trying to avoid losing momentum behind a dawdling Albon, cut the chicane altogether. He refused to give the place back, arguing that he had no choice if he wanted to avoid contact. The stewards disagreed, hitting him with a drive-through penalty. But Russell wasn't apologetic. In fact, he summed up the absurdity of the situation perfectly when he admitted, "At one point I was like, screw it. I don't care. I was going to finish nowhere anyway." The frustration wasn't limited to Russell. Max Verstappen, the reigning world champion, had nothing but contempt for the race. He pitted from the lead late on, knowing full well it wouldn't change his position. "You can't race here anyway," he said bluntly. "1 stop or 10 stops, it doesn't matter. I could have done 4 stops and still finished P4. That's not an exaggeration. It's a damning indictment." Verstappen even joked about turning the race into a Mario Kart parody. Maybe we should install bits on the car and throw bananas around. These aren't comments from rookies or backmarkers. They're from champions, the sport's biggest names. And when drivers are resorting to sarcasm to express their disillusionment, you know the problem runs deep. Even the strategists and team principals had little appetite to defend the charade. James Vowles of Williams called it what it was. It's not the way we want to go racing. Toto Wolff didn't even offer a verbal statement. He simply shook his head in visible disapproval when asked about the weekend's tactics. Meanwhile, former world champion Jenson Button went a step further. "The drivers are embarrassed," he said on Sky Sports. "As a kid, you dream about racing in F1. Then you come to Monaco, and it's about driving as slow as you can to help your teammate." And he's right. The Monaco Grand Prix has somehow become the antithesis of what F1 should represent. Speed, risk, precision, gone. What remains is a procession of high-performance machines stuck in a parade lap, while teams resort to chess moves instead of racecraft to gain an advantage. Charles Leclerc did his best to salvage something dramatic from the final laps. He pushed hard behind Lando Norris, whose McLaren was managing tyres while fending off two Ferraris and a lurking Verstappen. But despite Leclerc's best efforts, he never truly threatened Norris. There simply wasn't room to pass, not without risking disaster. The result was a procession cloaked in suspense, but ultimately devoid of action. The fact that McLaren walked away with its first Monaco win since 2008 is worth celebrating, especially for Norris, who held his nerve under immense pressure. But even he, in the post-race interviews, acknowledged that the win wasn't the most thrilling in terms of racing. "We won in Monaco, and it doesn't matter how you win," he said. "But yeah, I was nervous. A hard-earned victory. Yes. A great race? That's harder to argue." The broader concern, however, is that this wasn't an isolated incident. It's part of a long-term pattern. Monaco has consistently ranked near the bottom in overtaking statistics. Race fans have long accepted that the event is more about the pageantry than the on-track action. But this year was different. This year crossed the line, because when even the new rules designed to fix the problem make it worse, it forces a reckoning. F1 is now standing at a crossroads. Can it continue to host races at venues that cannot deliver real competition? Or does the heritage of Monaco override the sport's commitment to fair and exciting racing? There are ideas floating around: radical circuit modifications, limited grid sizes, reverse grids, or even turning Monaco into a time trial format. But all of them come with trade-offs. The saddest part of all this is that the drivers themselves were left apologising for something they couldn't control. Alex Albon looked into the camera and simply said, "Sorry, not for a bad performance, not for a crash, but for the fact that, as a collective, Formula One had failed to put on a worthy show." It was one of the most honest moments in recent F1 memory. The lesson? Monaco is no longer immune to criticism. The charm, the history, and the money can no longer distract from the fact that, from a racing perspective, this event is broken. And while Norris rightly celebrated a career milestone, the bigger story of Monaco 2025 may be what it exposed about the very future of Formula One. Should Monaco be radically redesigned, or should it be removed entirely from the calendar? Let me know your take in the comments, because if Formula One wants to stay the pinnacle of motorsport, it may need to start by rethinking the race that once defined its soul.